Well, we talked about this earlier. The NBA has always been a cyclical league, and the last 5 MVPs have all been bigs, 6'11" or bigger, and international players. Denver is big now. Boston got bigger now. Phoenix is big. Milwaukee is big. The Lakers are big. And the Warriors doubled down on old and small with Chris Paul. So what does it all mean? We bring in Chris Mannix. Chris, I said no GM in the league is saying to themselves, I want to be older and smaller, so it feels like the first of a couple moves for the Warriors, doesn't it?
Well, I think the driving force behind making this move had less to do with Chris Paul and more to do with freeing the Warriors up of the financial obligations owed to Jordan Poole. Certainly, all that transpired last season with Jordan Poole, the incident with Draymond, which was not his fault, but his subsequent, uneven play, especially in the playoffs, I think that led the Warriors to believe it was better for their long-term future to move off this contract and take on a shorter one. Chris Paul, while being a big name, is also a shorter contract. This upcoming year is the only year left of his guaranteed deal. So for Golden State, yeah, you get Chris Paul, and that's an obvious storyline. But for the Warriors, it's much more about future financial flexibility in making a deal like this.
Okay. So Hornets take Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson. Now, Scoot Henderson is more dynamic. He'll probably be on the Sports Center more. He's got a Derrick Rose quality that you just can't. It's magnetic, right? But I would argue if you start looking at the best 25 players ever, there's only a couple of small guys, Isaiah and Steph, and that I get Brandon Miller as a long, skillful. People are like, what about Scoot? And I guess Charlotte was disappointed, some of the fans, and my takeaway is it's a big man's league, is it not?
Well, the prototypical player of today, yes, Brandon Miller kind of fits into that archetype. He's a 6'6", 6'7", Paul George type swingman. And if he develops into that type of player, I would say it's a great decision by Charlotte. But my question coming into this draft with that pick was, would the Hornets pick the best player available, or would they pick the best player to play opposite of LaMelo Ball? Now, the Hornets will sit there and tell you that they believe they took the best guy on their board, that there was unanimity in their draft room about taking Brandon Miller. But if you ask around the league, Colin, and I talked to, half a dozen or more talent evaluators over the last couple of days, and most of them say they would take Scoot Henderson with a blank slate, that Scoot Henderson was the best player available. And look, history is kind of littered with bad examples of teams drafting for need and not the top talent. Most notably, just a couple of years ago, when Golden State drafted James Wiseman over LaMelo Ball. I mean, if Golden State didn't have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson already in place, they would have taken LaMelo Ball with that pick. They did, though, so they took James Wiseman, thought he might develop. He didn't. He turned out to be a toxic asset for them at the very end. So I think we'll find out, obviously, in the coming years, if Brandon Miller was the right guy to play opposite LaMelo Ball, or should they have taken Scoot Henderson regardless of LaMelo's place with the team?
The Porzingis move to the Celtics, here's where I believe it makes them better. They get jammed up offensively, and he can break those log jams. Just say, dude, go get a bucket. And he does, from the perimeter down low. Also, it's getting to be a bigger league. Giannis coming back strong. Jokic. Embiid, like we look at our MVPs, big as in. So I like the move. It does not answer the point guard dilemma, where I don't think Marcus was ever a true facilitator, though he has tremendous value for Memphis, maturity, toughness, defense. So I look at the Celtics today, and my takeaway, I think they're better on the offensive end. I'm not sure they're a better team, because Porzingis also has a history of getting hurt. In Boston, how is it playing? How do you view it, and how is it viewed?
Well, I think there still is another deal to come for the Celtics, because they can't go into next season with the backcourt they currently have in place. Right now, you're looking at Derek White being the starting point guard, Malcolm Brogdon either as a starter or a backup, and then you have got reserves in Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. Derek White for the Celtics is fine as a starting point guard. They're okay with that. But Malcolm Brogdon, Colin, obviously the severity of that injury was enough to scare off the Clippers, who don't care about Malcolm Brogdon's contract and desperately need a playmaker to add to that mix. That tells me the injury is significant and could cost Malcolm Brogdon some games going into next season. So you've got to add some other piece to that backcourt. And when you look at this deal, it's really Porzingis for Smart. Those are the key pieces here. But as a result of Porzingis being acquired, it's more likely than not the Celtics are going to lose Grant Williams. And Grant Williams, for all his flaws in the second half of last season, was an invaluable player to the Celtics over the last couple of years. They don't make the finals a year and a half ago if Grant Williams isn't there in Game 7 against Milwaukee making all those shots. So you're really talking about trading Kristaps Porziņģis for Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, and getting back a couple of first-round draft picks with Porzingis in return. That, to me, feels more like a lateral move until we see what else is to come.
Scoot Henderson, Dame, I mean, if you look at Portland's roster now, it's the Warriors without the trophies. It's guard heavy, and they're really, really good guards. Simons, Scoot, Dame, like those are really, really good players. Some young, some old. Once you I said this yesterday, this is not the Packers drafting Jordan Love, who needed years to practice. This would be the Packers drafting Justin Herbert, and Aaron Rodgers shows up in the first practice and, like, he's bigger and stronger than I am. You know what I mean? Like, I look at this and I think, it's nice to say they'll get along. This isn't going to work, is it, Chris?
No. Look, this is not going to be something that gets triggered over the next couple of days. That's simply not how Damian Lillard operates. There's a lot of sourcing that goes on with Damian Lillard, when the reality is Damian Lillard, to anyone that's wanted to talk to him, has spelled out exactly what he wants to see happen. I spoke to Damian Lillard as recently as March, and we talked just about this situation unfolding, where if the team was not in a position over the summer to be competitive, whatever that might mean, conference competitive, championship competitive, Damian Lillard said, me and Joe Cronin, the general manager, are going to sit down and figure out what's best for the franchise. Now, we're not quite yet at the point where that conversation needs to happen. We still have free agency, and the Blazers intend to be pretty active in trying to make a deal to upgrade their roster. They were active before the draft, trying to pry OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, among others, away from Toronto. So they are going to look for talent to make them more competitive. But if they don't get that guy, or if they don't get those guys, there will be a conversation with the Blazers front office and Damian Lillard. And more likely than not, the outcome of that conversation is Damian Lillard will become available, and they'll work together to find him a new team.
Since I started watching sports regularly, the 8 most hyped athletes I've ever seen before they arrived were Serena, LeBron, Tiger, Bryce Harper, Trevor Lawrence, Ken Griffey Jr., John Elway way back, and Wemby. And 7 of those 8 have hit. I don't think the coverage is over the top. I've never seen a young player that has that many moves, ever. I've never seen anything like it. What did you make of the coverage? Is it too hyperbolic last night?
No, I don't think it's too hyperbolic. Everyone I've talked to about Victor Wembanyama has used lofty language to describe him, has done little short of declaring it would be hard to see him anything but an all-time great. Like, this kid has everything. And I'm in New York this week, Colin, and, being around the Wembanyama scene all week long, where he's been at Yankee Stadium, he's been on Good Morning America, he's doing all these NBA events. There's a maturity to him that I think is going to make him a pretty special guy and a pretty special player. And he's going, of course, to a situation that is almost idyllic for a player like this. He is going to work under Greg Popovich for at least the next couple of years. He's already talked to the Spurs about working with Tim Duncan and with David Robinson to amplify his game. With his talent, his physical tools, his mindset, it would probably take a major injury or two to derail him from becoming a great player.
Yeah, it is. It is something. All right, Chris Mannix, my friend, it is great seeing you as always in New York, on the spot as always. Thanks, man. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.